For the New York City Housing Authority's significant amendment to the fiscal year 2015 annual plan and fiscal year 2016 annual plan public hearing. We have sign language interpreters for the hearing impaired and Spanish, Russian, and Chinese translators for those that need it. Will the interpreters please come to the microphone and identify yourselves?
Buenas noches a todos. Hay servicios de interpretación al idioma español. Para aquellas personas que lo necesiten, por favor acérquense a la mesa de servicios de idioma. Con este aparato uno lo coloca en el oído y puede escuchar todo lo que se va a decir hoy en español. Muchas gracias.
Добрый вечер. Если вам нужен перевод этой презентации на русский язык, получите, пожалуйста, специальное синхронное оборудование у стола переводчика в вестибюле. Спасибо.
大家好，我哋今晚會為大家提供廣東話嘅同聲翻譯。如果有需要嘅話，請到出面嘅登記處索取耳機。多謝。我們今晚會為大家提供國語的同聲翻譯。如果有需要的話，請到外面的桌子上領取耳機。謝謝。
Thank you all for taking the time to attend. Everyone is busy and you've made this a priority. We appreciate that so many of you here tonight are expressing an interest in NYCHA. In accordance with Section 5A of the United States Housing Act of 1937, as amended, housing authorities are required to develop, with review and input from residents and the general public, an annual plan that outlines its priorities for the upcoming year. NYCHA has also developed a significant amendment to the fiscal year 2015 annual plan for the Rental Assistance Demonstration Program. In July, NYCHA held 5 town hall meetings in community centers and other facilities in each of the 5 boroughs to discuss the significant amendment and the annual plan. In addition, a review period which began on June 26, 2015, encouraged our residents and advocates to provide written comments on the significant amendment to the fiscal year 2015 annual plan and the fiscal year 2016 annual plan. These comments were taken via fax, through the mail, and collected at each of the town hall meetings. The executive summaries of the amendment and annual plan were made available in 4 languages, English, Spanish, Chinese, and Russian, on June 26th for the public inspection at NYCHA's principal office at 250 Broadway, on NYCHA's website, at each local property management office, and all community operations, management, and leased housing borough offices, and at 5 designated community centers. The amendment and draft plan were also sent to all Resident Advisory Board delegates and alternates, and to each Resident Association president. The purpose of this public hearing is to obtain the views, comments, and recommendations of the public on the significant amendment to the fiscal year 2015 annual plan and the fiscal year 2016 annual plan. The amendment and draft plan are not final and will be modified before they are submitted to HUD. Please understand, however, that this evening is not intended as a forum for a verbal exchange. NYCHA representatives will not engage in discussions with the speakers, nor will they respond to questions. They are present to hear what you have to say about the significant amendment and the annual plan. This public hearing is being live streamed over the internet and will be available to view on NYCHA's website. Joining us tonight, we have the NYCHA Board, Chair and Chief Executive Officer Shola Olatoye, General Manager Michael P. Kelly, Beatrice Bird, Member, Victor A. Gonzalez, Member, Derek Cephas, Member, Willie Mae Lewis, Member, James A. Secreto, Chief of Housing Bureau of the New York City Police Department. Before we begin, I would like to introduce NYCHA's Chair and Chief Executive Officer, Shola Olatoye, and General Manager Michael Kelly, who will share with us a brief update of the Next Generation NYCHA initiatives.
Thank you, Janelle. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. There you go. It's great to see you all. I want to thank you all for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us here this evening. Again, I want to thank and acknowledge my fellow board members, my general manager, Mr. Michael Kelly, as well as our partner in many things, Chief James Secreto of the NYPD, and the many elected officials and representatives from those offices who are here this evening. What we'd like to do briefly before launching into the comment portion of the evening is walk folks through our recently launched 10-year strategic plan, Next Generation NYCHA. Last May 19th, many of us stood with the mayor as we released what we are quite excited about, which is our strategic plan for the next generation NYCHA. And this plan, those of you who've been at many of these meetings have seen plans and chairs come and go, but we are excited about this plan in that it is not a kitchen sink plan. It is a plan with very specific strategies around how to ensure that the 178,000 units that comprise the homes of more than 400,000 New Yorkers are here for another generation. We find ourselves at a very unique time in our history. This authority, if we were to proceed with no change status quo, we project that we would have a $425 million operating deficit in 10 years. Essentially, we would be functionally bankrupt. And this is not something that this administration nor this board seeks to oversee. Secondly, we also have less than 1 month of operating reserves. For many families, and particularly in a city like New York, that is the reality, the reality for many families. But for an authority who manages the homes of, as I said, more than 400,000 New Yorkers, this is not a place for us to stay. And so we had to make some hard choices. We asked for a lot of money. And we are really putting into place a series of management and leadership reforms to ensure our vision for a safe, clean, and connected NYCHA. And so the plan is organized around 4 key goals: around ensuring short-term financial sustainability, long-term revenue diversification, 2, operating as a landlord. And we use that language very intentionally. This is something that we need to go back to the basics. We need to ensure that we can perform our most important part of our mission to serve and provide safe, clean, and affordable housing to all of you. We know we have a lot of work to do. But this is a very intentional and important goal of our work together. 3, we have to rebuild our public housing portfolio, and we also have to support the many New Yorkers who are still in need of housing for their families. And so we will look at our portfolio in a transparent, direct, and open way, but ultimately to ensure that the 178,000 units that we call public housing remain so. And then 4th, engaging with our residents in communities in a different way. This is one type of forum, as Ms. Hudson mentioned. This is not, unfortunately, a place for the exchange of ideas, but many of you have been part of the process over the past 16 months where we, as NYCHA, have come to you, you've come to us, you've emailed us, we've sat in community rooms, churches, et cetera, to engage and really have a different kind of conversation. And that is something that we look forward to doing more of. Am I pointing this the right way? And so we're pleased to say that with regard to goal number 1 around funding, the mayor has reversed the long time practice of the authority paying pilots, payment in lieu of taxes to the city. Since 1948, I believe, NYCHA has paid almost $30 million to the city of New York as property taxes, and this administration reversed that long-time practice. Also reversed our annual payment to the NYPD for basic services that our residents, like every New Yorker, should receive. And so those are real resources back into the authority to help us deliver on our mission. We also did oversee the eventual transfer of 24 community centers and 17 senior centers to our partners in city government this past spring. And I'm pleased to say, in partnership with our union colleagues, we were able to preserve all of the jobs that were associated with those programs, but more importantly, helping us to focus on our mission as a landlord and really working in partnership with our colleagues in government. I was very pleased to announce what we hope is really a model for how we work with the philanthropic and private sector community, which is to raise money to actually provide pathways to opportunity for NYCHA residents. We were pleased to announce a grant with Citibank to work with NYCHA residents on new employment opportunities and entrepreneurial training. A couple of weeks ago, I stood with the mayor and Secretary Julian Castro to announce a major investment in broadband access. NYCHA residents, like every New Yorker, this is not a luxury. This is now a necessity. Whether it's for your job, whether it's for your school, NYCHA residents have every right to have the same type of access to technology. And while this is a very important investment, and we look forward to seeing this replicated throughout the portfolio. We also recognize that it's important that our roofs are replaced. More than a third of our portfolio is more than 60 years old in terms of the age of our buildings. And so replacing roofs is critical to deal with the paint and the mold and the tile work orders that many residents are suffering with. And we're pleased to say that the mayor made a $300 million commitment, $100 million for the next 3 years. We've already begun work in the Queensbridge houses to actually begin to replace that roof that hasn't been replaced, I believe, since that building's construction, and we will do that in 10 other developments throughout the city. We look forward to welcoming our partners in state government who also made a commitment to begin to fund public housing again, and we hope that they will take a page from the city and invest in real investments that actually have an impact on people's lives, like replacing the roofs in our very old buildings. A number of operational initiatives around improving our energy performance. This is a fancy word for sealing the building. One of the major issues, again, for any landlord, water is the worst offender, and so we will receive some resources from HUD to help us seal more than 89 developments to ensure that we can actually protect those buildings. And I am very pleased to say that I really did not want another year to go by for the authority in acknowledging the anniversary of Hurricane Sandy and have us not begin construction. And I'm pleased to say that we finally signed all of the letter of understandings with FEMA, and we expect to start to see resources flowing to the authority. We have not received $1 to date, but we are very confident that resources will begin to flow and we can begin the real work of repair and resiliency in the more than 35 Sandy-affected developments. A number of initiatives that led by the general manager and the entire team around how do we do our work better. Residents, I'm sure many of you will share with us tonight the frustration of having to call multiple times for the same repair, or people showing up and not having the resources that they need to fix the reason why they showed up in the first place. Huge challenges. We hear you, we acknowledge it, and we've actually already started with several initiatives in developments across the city. Fix It Forward is both about removing some of the layers of bureaucracy, but also working smarter. Also engaging with you in a different way. One of the major challenges is scheduling work when folks have to take time off from work, and that's a reality for many families. Actually giving you that power as a resident to schedule your repairs when you are available through My NYCHA app, which will be launching with a small pilot by the end of the summer. Actually, it's already launched with a small pilot with 2,800 residents who are also NYCHA employees, and we'll be rolling that out throughout the portfolio over the course of the next year. Again, real-time repairs, as we do for the first time began last year. NYCHA restarted apartment inspections, and as we begin those inspections, instead of having residents have to call in the various repairs that are right there, actually equipping staff with the resources to address the individual work orders that they might see right then and there. We actually have men and women showing up at apartments that are currently going through inspections and being able to fix minor things, right? So whether this be a missing grate, a doorknob, batteries for smoke alarms, window adjustments, etc. But really trying to again shrink the time, lessen the time that you all have to wait for these types of repairs. We're starting this pilot in 3 developments with the hopes of rolling it out through the rest of the authority over the course of the next year. Similarly, around real-time dispatching. Working with maintenance and supervisors, maintenance workers and supervisors to track and report repairs in real time, as opposed to staff having to go back to the office to get assignments, doing it with a handheld as we speak. Again, this is about improving the quality of service to our residents. And while we are starting in specific developments, 2 developments for real time, again, expecting to roll that out throughout the rest of the portfolio. A number of other initiatives around how we measure, how we hold ourselves accountable, and we will be ensuring that those metrics are published, are online, are translated, are there for you to hold us accountable as we begin this work. Just to go back, last year we talked about a major initiative that launched in the beginning of this year called OpMom, which was an opportunity for us to really push accountability down to the local level. We've initiated this in 18 developments, and some early data is to suggest that we are actually improving service times in these developments, but again, this is just starting, and there's a lot of work and additional training that has to happen here. But what I think the big distinction here is really working with resident leaders as part of the management team. This is a new way of working for the authority, and so we're going to make some mistakes, but I think it is the direction that we need to be moving as an authority, working smarter, working in a more transparent way. So there are a lot of ways in which we hope to engage with all of you. As I said, tonight is unfortunately not one of those ways. It's not truly a true dynamic conversation. It's more us listening to you, which is an important part of the process. But we also need you all to be advocates for us. As I said, we are at a critical point in our history. We need additional resources for our men and women in uniform to ensure our communities remain safe. We need resources to replace roofs, to decrease the work orders, and we need your support to improve on basic quality of life issues where the resident has an important role as well. So here are the many ways in which you can be in touch with us, as well as joining and being a part of your local resident association. And so with that, I want to thank you. And if you have not had an opportunity to take a look at Next Generation NYCHA, please go online or talk to your local property manager and/or community operations staff. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair Olatoye. We hope that as many people as possible will have an opportunity to express their comments. So before we begin the actual hearing, let's go over the following ground rules to make this evening go smoothly for all of us. If you wish to speak, first you must fill out a speaker's slip. They are available in the entrance area at the table marked Speaker Sign In. Please line up at each of the microphones in the aisles and wait for your turn to speak. Each speaker is allowed 3 minutes to speak. On the stage, you will see a timer with 3 lights. When you begin to speak, the green light will be on and the timer will begin to count down. When the yellow light is lit, it means that you should start to conclude your remarks. When the red light is turned on, your 3 minutes to provide comments are over. A table has been set up outside so that written comments may also be submitted. Numbered speaker slips are non-transferable, and if you are not present or do not wish to speak when your name and number is called, you will forfeit the opportunity to speak. The hearing is being recorded and transcribed by a stenographer, so please speak only from the microphones in the aisles and identify yourself, your development, or affiliation. Remember, we are here to comment on the significant amendment and the annual plan. Any personal comments on, criticisms of, or oral attacks on NYCHA personnel, resident representatives, and public attendees, or any demeaning, discriminatory, or ethnic slurs or vulgar language will not be tolerated. I, as the moderator of this evening's meeting, reserve the right to immediately move on to the next speaker online if any comments are deemed inappropriate. As the moderator, I am in charge of the public hearing. Please be considerate of your neighbors and follow the moderator's directions. We are here to consider issues that are of concern to everyone, not issues that concern only a single resident or individual. If you have an issue that concerns only you or your apartment, we have tables set up outside specifically for that purpose. Please fill out a resident response form at the table outside marked Resident Complaints. The passing out of materials is not allowed in the auditorium. However, a general information station is available outside where leaflets and flyers may be displayed. Resource tables have been set up outside with information so that at the end of the meeting you can pick up information that may be of interest to you. We encourage you to learn more about resident economic empowerment and sustainability, fair housing, family services. Copies of the executive summary for the significant amendment and the annual plan are available in English, Spanish, Chinese, and Russian for review purposes. So let's begin. Speaker number 1, Lorraine Brown, followed by speaker number 2, Councilmember Ben Carlos.
Good evening, everyone. I want to thank you for the opportunity to allow me to express my comments this evening. I have written my comments, and so I'm going to summarize the key points. Under the previous administration, I had suggested that each borough be responsible for its operation, have a director and a deputy director, because each borough has its own specific needs, and I think things would be expedited and handled a lot better. I'm also concerned about the Section 3 implementation. As of today, you are still not compliant. We have a lot of money on the table. In order to go forward, I think it's critical that we become compliant and offer training for the residents, management, and public officials. Also, too, with regard to interpreters, I think it's critical that we have interpreters for every meeting for different languages, and I would recommend interns, and that you contact the various schools and colleges to get volunteers to come in and do that. And also, more importantly, I support Next Generation with the exceptions that I listed in my comments. And in order to go forward with RAD, you have to be compliant with Section 3, but more importantly, to protect the rights of the tenants under 964, an MOU needs to be written so that these rights are protected. And do you believe I have a minute left? That's unusual for me. So I'm going to give my comments. And Councilmember Carroll's. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Shola, NYCHA board members, and most importantly, to the members of the community who join us tonight. Governed by the people only works with the people, and only when you show up. So thank you. If you could just continue to stay involved, and so thank you. I'm Councilmember Ben Kalos. That's at Ben Kalos over social media. I represent the Upper East Side, Midtown East, Roosevelt Island, East Harlem, getting NYCHA on track. It's been a pleasure to work with you on the $3 billion in Sandy recovery funds that have come to NYCHA, including $33 million that has come to Isaacs that will be starting in September, as well as the Section 3 forums that we've been engaged in trying to bring jobs to my NYCHA developments and the surrounding folks in the community. Big fan of the Next Generation plan. You're really taking it on. The one place I did want to focus is on, under the plan, land owned by NYCHA is being used for new developments, which is being called infill developments. This is something that previously came. Land is a valuable commodity. It's a finite resource. New York City is 309 square miles, or 197,760 acres, with NYCHA occupying 2,473 acres, which is about 1.25%, and currently providing affordable housing to nearly 5% of the very low income who live here. So that is a huge return on the small piece of land that it is. But once we sell that land, lease it, or give it away for market rate luxury development, it's gone forever. And we won't ever get it back. We won't ever be able to afford to buy it back. And given our extreme shortage of affordable housing, we must ensure that we leverage city-owned property for the maximum possible gain, which means 100% affordable housing. The initial requests for proposals for the first 3 sites of the infill program in Brooklyn and the Bronx are all for 100% affordable housing units. This is a great start to the program. It should be a model, and you should continue to infill at 100% affordability. Existing residents must have a vote on whether to build these new developments, a voice in their siting, design, and the public benefits they provide, as well as the right to be the first occupants of these new units. These developments, coupled with a strong voice for residents in the community, represents a model for building low-income housing for New Yorkers that we need, provided that, again, it is 100% affordable housing. And I will reserve my time and submit written comments. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Marilyn Tucker, followed by Senator Bill Perkins.
All power, all glory, and all honor belongs to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. I greet you from the Church of the Open Door, where the Reverend Dr. Mark V.C. Taylor is pastor. Yes. Good evening. My name is Marilyn Tucker, and I live in Ingersoll houses. Security and safety issues are still outstanding in Farragut, Ingersoll, and Walt Whitman houses. Security cameras that are in other developments have not been put in downtown Brooklyn. Since the City Council has allocated the money in their budget for this, when will installation begin? Also fixing the locks on the doors to the buildings and not fixing the intercom systems is backwards. Or telling tenants that they have to have a landline in order to use an intercom. In this day and age of technology, it is ridiculous. Tenants have to actually leave their apartments to make their way downstairs to open the doors for their guests. Would you like to live like this? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tucker.
Good evening. I'm Senator Bill Perkins, and I represent Harlem, the Upper West Side, Morningside Heights, and El Barrio East Harlem. I have nearly 50 New York City Housing Authority developments in my senatorial district, spanning 324 buildings, 28,119 apartments, and a total number of 61,298 residents that I am privileged to represent. I have submitted my complete testimony to the authority and will give an overview of several key points of consideration. I am in complete agreement with all of the points made in the collective testimony submitted by the New York City Alliance to Preserve Public Housing, with particular emphasis on critical concerns raised with regard to the infill concept, including the community visioning process, levels of affordability, and the ownership structure, and the transfer and conversion of public housing units into Section 8 program. My cardinal concern is that the New York City Housing Authority is intentionally and fastidiously moving into a new operating model that relies upon the private sector. New York City Housing Authority now speaks of a new, quote, business model, end quote, that, quote, attracts outside financing within a portfolio that holds, quote, enormous untapped potential. The one thing that separates the Housing Authority from private developers is that they serve the public good. They are a mission-based, not-for-profit organization. By definition, private developers serve a private interest. They exist to make money, whether off of exorbitant market rate rents or generous tax credits and subsidies, or both. Adding the profit motive to even one development or building in the New York City Housing Authority is a step that is simply inconsistent with the mission of the authority. So many examples exist of the public good being diluted and compromised by private greed. The funding structure of charter schools and the Puerto Rican debt crisis are two prime examples of the colossal ramifications of greed guised as generosity that supposedly serves the public good. It is through this lens that I view the plans of the Housing Authority. In conclusion, revenue maximization and leveraging land was not part of the original mission of the Housing Authority, and I'm convinced that the authority sacrifices something important in doing so. The Housing Authority, as an affordable housing provider, has always been a success story and is one of the last bulwarks against the forces of gentrification and excessive market rate rents in our communities. In this new era, I hope that the authority will be led and guided by the collective voices and will of the residents and take steps to ensure that the next generation of Housing Authority are treated like the very first generation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Perkins. Our next speaker is Juana Lino, followed by Councilmember Rosenthal. Juana Lino. Okay, we'll move on to Councilmember Rosenthal.
Thank you. So I'm Councilmember Rosenthal. I represent the Upper West Side of Manhattan. And Chair Alatoya, it's always great to see you. Thank you so much for having this public meeting and being here yourself, and also to the board, thank you so much for being here and for listening. It's always my pleasure to see Board Member Gonzalez, who is the gem of the Upper West Side. So thanks so much for being here. And of course, thank you to all the residents and the resident leaders and the activists who are here in the room. I'm here today to support the NYCHA residents who live in the developments, particularly in my city council, District 6. They live in Harborview Terrace, Amsterdam Houses, Amsterdam Additions, Dome Site, Wise Towers, De Hostos, Wasura A, B, and C, names I've never liked, Sandra Thomas, and the Wasura Brownstone scattered sites. There are about 3,100 apartments in total. I work closely with all of the tenant leaders in these buildings. They are devoted public servants who do not get paid for all of their labor and their generous work on behalf of their tenants. They fight so hard on behalf of their tenants every day. And we've been through numerous battles together, fighting for better security systems, working front doors, elevator repairs, and more. And I don't use the word battle lightly, but it truly describes my experience working with and on behalf of the tenants and the tenant leaders. The tenant leaders often tell me they feel their views are not heard and their experiences not respected. I hope this is the beginning of a process that will be different. Let me give you an example. The scattered sites in my district, which number 36 buildings and house hundreds of families, they're not even aware that they're discussed in this NYCHA Next Generation plan in terms of proposing private management. This will be a major change that residents don't even know about. That's probably why they're not here tonight. The scattered sites are but one example of the issue of lack of resident input in the NYCHA plans. I urge NYCHA to seek out resident leaders and actively involve them in the planning process. You know, we've had some successes and some failures working with NYCHA. Successes such as the Reese Job and Career Training Workshops, 3 were held in my district this year, and I think they were successful for 2 reasons. One, it was the NYCHA leaders who organized the process, welcomed Reese into their community buildings, and made sure their residents got the information that they needed. But there were also some striking failures, such as attempting to install and coordinate the layered access security system in the Federal 8 building. I hope to see the city build on the Reese training sessions, collaborating with tenant leaders and creating better outreach and maximizing its potential for residents. And I expect vast improvement in the abysmal failure that has been the security system installations in my district. And much of that failure is due to the lack of a respectful partnership with the tenant leaders. While there are some interesting proposals in Next Gen Plan, I believe there's a need for caution and for further input, specifically resident input. I support the NYC Alliance to preserve public housing, and I hope its recommendations are seriously considered before NYCHA moves forward with its next generation plans. I'm very interested in better understanding the plan's commitment to reduce its central office staff. My experience in meetings with NYCHA central office that there are many layers of staff who all seem to have the same responsibility, and often fingers are pointed to each other, but no one's left to actually take responsibility to get the work completed. I think a leaner, meaner staff would get you a more responsible and successful organization. It's our responsibility as a city to ensure NYCHA succeeds and that its residents thrive. As Councilmember Richie Torres always says that NYCHA is our gem for public housing. We have to respect it and nurture it. And it demands prioritizing our resources. I'm so pleased for all the things that you mentioned in your introduction about NYCHA no longer having to make pilot payments or, fire, whatever it is. But we have to have an inclusive process that allows residents to participate in a meaningful way in the planning of their own future communities. We should expect nothing less. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Melly Medj from Patterson Houses, followed by Reverend Joyce McDonald.
Good evening. My name is Nellie McKay. I'm from Patterson Houses and a former state committee woman of the Bronx. I'm coming here tonight asking again for ramps. I have seniors Saturday. I was at the laundromat. They're crying because they can't get down the stairs. They would like to go out and do a little shopping. Now, you know, these ramps been in force since 1965. I don't know what happened to the money that they didn't put those ramps there. And they still have the space there for the ramps. And I don't think it's fair. Thank God I just made 86, and I still can walk. But last Sunday, one of the seniors had a birthday. The children came, brought her to church. You can't ask your children to give up their family and come every time you want to go down the stairs. And the seniors, we pay our rent. And I don't think it's fair. Housing should start to putting the ramps in as soon as possible. And I see the next generation. What about us? We're the generation. You see, we're making a way for the next generation. We are making a way for the next generation. And you know, when I moved in housing, the do's and the don'ts, I followed those. I repeat again at the meeting, you should send letters to the tenants and let them know where to put the garbage. I had a sign made where they should put the garbage. People bring in little bags. It's not fair. And the guys clean. They shine the floors are so beautiful, but we have to work together with the people that work there. We can't expect them to clean up and then come back again and clean up when the tenant is not putting the garbage where it's supposed to be. Now, the money, do I have time? I'm going back. See, I like to go back to history. 1965. Housing got 3 grants, $68 million. $50 million of that money is supposed to be locks. We still have some of the locks because I had my own lock put on. Some of the people are still getting the keys, trying to get into the locks. And we were supposed to get security cameras. Now, 1965 to 2015, we could just now get in the cameras. And all of that money, $6.6 million from 6 million remain unspent from 15 million 1992. 14.2 remain unspent 15 million in 1993. 38 million in 1994 is unspent. Housing Authority claiming they had $4 million in 1992 was unspent. Also, $14.1 million in 1993 was in the coffin. Where did this money go? Why couldn't we have to have the cameras? The building hasn't been cleaned on the outside since I've been there 49 years. You see, we are people, you need to think of us as people, not as someone that, you know, don't have brains to think for ourselves. We have brains to think. You see, real seniors use this up here. And I think you all should please put the ramps in. I came in the other day, I have to pay my rent. Plus I gave a man $3 to take me in with my grocery. I can't deduct that from my rent. You see, I still have to give someone $3. And I'm begging y'all, please, help the seniors, the ones in the wheelchair. And also, the elevator door. I repeat that again. Elevator door was put in Thanksgiving. And the manager told me, we don't have paint. Some of the paper's still on the elevator door. You mean to tell me you can't paint the elevator door and clean it up and make it look like an elevator door? We're not living in 1929. We're living in 2015. And I remember one night, I was like 12 o'clock, the mayor said he wanted to make it better for the people who live in New York City Housing Authority. So when the money come in, they should make it better for the people that live in New York City Housing Authority. You know, I put this in the building, and my building has got a little bit better. Dear tenants, this is our home. Please help keep it clean. I would like to see this building, 2645, the #1 building. May God bless you. Thank you. I love Pastor. I love my apartment. All of my grands and great-grands get 4- and 5-year college education out of New York, right out of New York City Housing Authority. I was the first one started a garden there. So you see, I'm there to help, build, not to tear down. Please help the senior citizens. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. McKay. Reverend Joyce McDonald.
Yes. All power, all glory, and all honor belong to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. I greet you from the Church of the Open Door, where Reverend Dr. Mark V.C. Taylor is the pastor. My name is Reverend Joyce McDonald. We are happy to see the apartments in Ingersoll houses are now being rented out after sitting for so long. We would still like to know, what is the selection process when an apartment is wanted? Since the amount of persons of Asian descent moving into public housing has grown by 400%, and the waiting list of thousands and thousands, mostly African Americans and Latinos, has not decreased. This is what we would like to know.
Thank you. Next we have Gail Brewer, Manhattan Borough President, followed by Pamela Ingram.
Good evening. Thank you very much. I am Gail Brewer, the Manhattan Borough President, and I want to thank you, Madam Chair, and everybody on the board. And we have a lot of units in Manhattan. In fact, there are more people living in NYCHA citywide than all of Boston, and there are just as many people living in NYCHA in Manhattan as Berkeley, California. So we're obviously talking about very large locations. I'm not going to read all of this, but I do know that, Madam Chair, you're trying, your staff is trying, and you have major financial challenges, and we're aware of that. And I want to just say that we obviously have read Next Generation, and we've been talking about it, and we're here to discuss it tonight. So last month, on July 8th and July 14th, with the assistance of your staff, and particularly your General Manager, Mr. Kelly, I held 2 NYCHA town hall meetings, Northern Manhattan and Lower Manhattan, to bring NYCHA staff and over 250 Manhattan NYCHA residents to discuss some of the issues that concerns the borough's residents the most. And I gave everyone the opportunity to be part of the conversation. They submitted questions. And I just want to give you a sampling of what they had to say, some of which you addressed when you were speaking earlier. But they want to know things like, what about the work orders that are not being completed, even though I know you're trying? And why are senior centers closed with no input from the residents or the resident association boards? They want to sometimes, run their own centers, or at least have a lot of input. They want to know specifics. This is, as you all know, a very smart group of individuals, particularly the leadership. They're really awesome. I also often think they're like presidents because they have so much responsibility. So they want specifics. Where is the Hurricane Sandy money? I know that Ben Kalos mentioned that it was helpful to his developments, but they want specifics. They know that, to the credit of the mayor, $73 million NYCHA no longer has to pay to NYPD, but exactly where did that $73 million go? It might have gone to great things, but where did it go? They just want transparency. And then there's the $30 million pilot program, to the credit of the mayor, that was waived, but they want to know specifically what did it go for. They also want to know about the 311 issue. If it takes over the current centralized, as I call CCC system, what exactly is the plan? Obviously, with 311 data, as somebody who chairs the technology committee and loves data, you can get that data, but they want to know how is that going to help with their repairs. People are concerned about drugs and violence. I think we already know that. We're very concerned about demolishing buildings. I don't think NYCHA is going to do that, but they are concerned. They want to know about the leasing ground if, in fact, there is an infill program. When you outsource construction, they are concerned. Obviously, they're talking about repairs and construction. How will NYCHA ensure that the work is being done correctly? What kind of oversight? They want to know about housing for seniors and the disabled. They want to know about the security cameras. And they want to know where they're going to be placed. They want to know all about the infill and public-private partnership. How does that increase the rights of tenants? And as we know, when you do some of these programs, tenants can no longer be on the citywide tenant program because when you're in private management, you cannot be on that. You don't have a voice anymore. That's of concern to me in particular. And then what are the efforts to have more social workers at NYCHA to deal with individual and family challenges, which are always true of all of us. So those were some of the issues that came up. Your general manager did a great job of trying to answer them, but many more answers are needed, and I think with the Next Gen plan, as we talked about then, we have to sit down with each resident association at their location to talk about the plan, because it's one thing to read it, but it's another thing to go bit by bit so that people understand it. And then I think you get more buy-in. I'm willing to go to everyone in Manhattan, and I'm sure my colleagues would go also. So we're very appreciative also, of course, of Victor Bach. Victor Bach is kind of like our hero. And all of the work that he has done, the New York City Alliance to Preserve Public Housing, and we think it should be adopted. But let me just be a little bit more specific about the Next Gen. We talk a lot about the need and the hope to create 10,000 affordable units in underutilized NYCHA-owned property, which is also called infill. I want to pick up on what Helen Rosenthal mentioned, the scatter site issue, which isn't in my testimony, but I am concerned. I know the scatter sites, and if you give them to nonprofit, I know it's easier to do that financially. The problem in Manhattan, not the other boroughs, is that nonprofits tend to sell properties. Not tomorrow, not in 10 years, but you have to understand that I know about 12 nonprofits in the city of New York who've just sold their buildings in Manhattan to make condos and money, and they're moving to the Bronx and Brooklyn or other parts of the state. So I do think you need to hold on to your scatter sites and not have a situation, even if you still own the land, there's ways in which things are not part of NYCHA anymore. So I am concerned about that. I'm also concerned because, as I said at the town hall meetings, 50-50 versus 100% affordable. I really think we should think of a way that the land, if it is to be infill, is still 100% affordable for those developments. And so I know it's a very popular issue, easier said than done, but I know that we're doing it at Harborview, hopefully, and you've been working on it with some with RBI and with some of the other very creative developers where you don't get as much money for NYCHA, but you still get money. So obviously, the other part of any infill is the tenants in the developments have to be at the table from the very beginning, and any discussion has to help their development in terms of resources, not just the general fund, because that's also a big concern. I want to talk about housing for the homeless. I know that the coalition and others have very strong feelings about putting in, and I agree, working homeless into NYCHA. The only caveat I would mention is to make sure that there's a lot of social services and support, because otherwise there are a lot of challenges for everybody, and we all need support. Those families understandably need a lot, and it's not fair to the residents if they don't get it. Recycling. We have in the Borough President's Office the Solid Waste Advisory Board. We're very active, and I know that you have a big greening effort, and we would like to work with you, but there's a lot of work to be done on NYCHA in terms of that issue, and we are more than willing to work with you, even to have people to have the smaller garbage bags given to them so that when they use the chutes, it works. But there are just a lot of issues to be worked on. Technology, something that I know a little bit about. One of these issues with these cameras, we could spend a whole evening talking about cameras, but it does seem to me this is an amazing story. Those that have been working with the cameras like Polly Spain's and those on the west side, It's called dropcam.com. That's the name of the site that bought those cameras. Well, guess what? You're not going to believe this. That was sold to Nest, which is a small company. Nest just sold to Google, and Google is now taking that company and other companies and putting it under their new company called Alphabet, which was announced today. So it's really ironic. The West Side has now got cameras sponsored by Google. Just want you to know that. And they work, and they only cost $300 each. So you need to look at the camera situation. That is something that I think can be very innovative. You've had a lot of discussions about that. But the cameras not only have to exist, but they have to have tenant input, and I think you can do it less expensively than what is being considered. I won't go into more about that, but there's a lot in here. I would like to see the open data technology that I passed and initiated used more at NYCHA, where you're on the city's open data site, and of course with NYCHA repair staff should be equipped with mobile devices that are connected to a centralized database so that every repair visit and work performed can be documented with resident sign-off. They can get a piece of paper that says, this is when the staff came, and then they have his or her case right there in front of them so that they know about the quality and the timing of that visit. I think you're working hard on resident engagement. I think one of the best steps would be to have NextGen staff to sit down with residents and to be able to go through. We have been doing, for community board members, SWAB members, Community Education Council members, a whole series of trainings on conflict of interest, on Robert's Rules of Order, on resolution writing, on land use, on technology, on budget. And we would certainly be glad to work with you. We've done hundreds of these trainings. We have trained every single one of our 300 community board members, and we'd be glad to work with you. We need training of the resident leaders. They need the help, and we would love to work with you. So in summary, I hope that we adopt the Alliance to Preserve Public Housing's recommendations, keep housing built on public land affordable and accessible, improve everyone's quality of life through implementing environmental responsible initiatives and using the latest technology. And of course, the most important, as you know, is meaningful engagement of residents in dialogue and getting their input. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Borough President. I'm just going to ask, I have a very, very long speakers list, and I would like to get to all of the speakers on my list. Please be mindful of the clock and keep your comments to 3 minutes, please. Pamela Ingram, followed by Axia Torres.
All power, all glory, and all honor belong to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. I greet you from the Church of the Open Door, where our pastor is the Reverend Dr. Mark V.C. Taylor. My name is Pamela Ingram. I'm a retired manager of housing and a member of the Church of the Open Door. NYCHA, according to us, is not meeting its obligation under the Section 3 federal mandate to provide employment opportunities to the residents. And the residents do want to work. And NYCHA really needs so much so to have their rent. And if you allowed them to work, you would get both. We would like the number for Farragut, Ingersoll, Walt Whitman, Marcy, and Atlantic Terminal housing developments. According to you, you have met this mandate. However, we fail to see how.
Thank you.
Good evening. On behalf of the residents of Alfred E. Smith houses, we will be submitting a written testimony by August 30th. Briefly, we support and have signed off on the Alliance position paper. We want to reinstate tonight the need of the review of the rent collection process and the parking lot selection and pricing. Alfred E. Smith houses is located in the borough of Manhattan, and due to that fact, we are being penalized for living there. In the real estate language is location, location, and location. While understanding that fact, we are also U.S. citizens. The original residents were war veterans, taxpayers, decent families trying to raise our children and next generation by living decently and respectful of our neighbors. While anyone thinks that we do not have these rights, is shameful and unjust for us under the United States Constitution, and it is our right to have these basic needs. Rent delinquency is high because rents are being raised on gross income and usually with no increase in income to the household. Some residents have seen increases more than once in their annual review year. Residents are playing catch-up all year long. More has to be done in telling residents what credits they are entitled to in system, credits such as babysitting charges or extreme medical bills. Residents should be told how to document properly, and residents should be allowed to make rent payments monthly, even if they are not New York City employees, but based on how their income is dispersed. Greystone contracts should be terminated since they think and act as like we are the employees, and the management of the developments should handle the parking in each development to service the resident, collect the revenue for each development's budgeting. And in closing, Alfred E. Smith looks forward to discussing these issues locally with respect and honestly. Respectfully submitted. Good night.
Thank you, Ms. Torres. Next, we have Nancy Ortiz, followed by Sarah Hill.
Good evening. On behalf of Baruch Houses and Mr. Roberto Napoleon, Mr. Napoleon supports and has signed on to the Alliance position paper. My name is Nancy Ortiz. I represent 1,773 families of Vladeck Houses. My full testimony will be submitted in writing by August 14th. However, I am in agreement with most of the points submitted by the New York City Alliance to Preserve Public Housing. However, I would like to bring attention to the following. To aggressively and egregiously increase parking fees to Manhattanites only is not only a tale of two cities, it is a tale of one borough versus the outer boroughs. To penalize Manhattanites for living in Manhattan by aggressively increasing parking fees for up to $300 to $400 a month is outrageous, and it is unfair to target Manhattan versus the other outer boroughs. The authority is consistently voicing fiscal crisis. However, the executive department staffing levels have increased by approximately 70% in the past 7 years. Yet the development staffing levels have decreased by approximately 25% in the last 7 years. The developments are currently doing more with less, yet the executive department is doing less with more. Can you show me the balance? Why outsource the parking lots when NYCHA can keep the revenue? It's a win-win. Infill. The integration of market with NYCHA does not work. We don't want poor doors inside NYCHA developments, and that is what it will create. Infill should be 100% affordable to low and middle income families. Treat the next generation of NYCHA as if it was the first generation. Somehow in the years, this has gotten lost in translation. In conclusion, the practice of meeting with the 9 persons in the room, CCOP, should be reevaluated. Many of the information shared with CCOP and RAD does not get disseminated to the rest of the resident leadership. We are 366, yet there is only a handful that make these decisions, and all of these programs and pilots and next generation plans are sat with them, yet we, the ones that are working in the development day by day, are the last ones to know. So I really believe that you should really consider meeting with all resident leaders when it comes to plans like this. Thank you, and have a good evening.
Thank you. Next, Sarah Hill. Sarah Hill.
All power, all glory, and all honor belongs to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. I greet you from the Church of the Open Door, where the Reverend Dr. Mark V.C. Taylor is pastor. I am standing here. My name is Sarah Hill. I lived in Marcy houses. My husband and I have lived there longer than any other tenants for 67 years. And we're very proud to be there. But what I came tonight for was to tell you that we would like to begin by supporting the New York City Alliance to Preserve Public Housing's position paper. Also, one of the church's concern is our seniors. That is why I'm standing here, 85 years old. And thank you very much. And the downsizing policy that is being implemented, the downsizing policy, do you hear me, is being implemented in New York City housing developments. We would like to know when we are going to see the amendment to this policy in writing. Mr. Brian Hannon, Director of Government Relations, came to Farragut and Ingersoll Tenants Association meeting to bring us this information. We were very happy about that. But information is no good without it in writing. Now, as I stand here, I'm looking around and I see most of the people here are seniors. We're talking about the next generation, but most of us are seniors. And I would like for every senior in this room to let the staff know how they feel about getting this amendment in writing. Let's start now. Let's something. Let everybody know that the seniors are here. Raise your hand, seniors, and let that board know that we're here. We're here in full. Thank you very much, and I thank you for the privilege of me being able to speak to you. I'm sorry I couldn't get down front, but I think I did enough up here.
Our next speaker is Akram Ahmed, followed by Pearl Barkley.
Hello, and thank you. I want to take the time to thank everybody in the room for showing up. Although we might not share the same views or ideas, I find this very important, and I appreciate everyone for coming out here. This is what true civic engagement looks like. So I'll get down to it. My name is Akram Ahmed, and I'm a resident leader and a member of Community Voices Heard. I live in Clinton Dwight houses in East Harlem. I have lived in public housing for nearly 18 years, and I am appalled at the city's idea around NextGeneration NYCHA being the only solution to the critical existing issues in public housing. This issue is important to me on a personal level for many reasons. I have witnessed the decay of my building firsthand. Deteriorating infrastructure has led to health complications for my family and my neighbors. My mother is in the hospital weekly to receive medical care due to complications related to hazardous conditions in our home. Some of the major concerns in my community, as well as across the city regarding NextGeneration NYCHA, are as listed. Public housing lots are already densely populated with minimal open space for recreational activities, and by building in these open spaces, you disregard the environmental, the physical, and the psychological impacts on the people in these neighborhoods. The privatization of public land, which residents fear will lead into full privatization of the public housing stock in its entirety. So true resident engagement, 500,000 residents live in public housing. There's no reason why there are any empty seats in this auditorium right here. So maybe there are different methods, different actions we can take in order to fill these seats, and moreover. Affordable housing, in what sense? Affordable for whom? Whether it's 50-50 or 100%, this is not addressing the needs of the low-income families who make under $46,000 a year. So we want to get away from this idea of 100% affordable housing, because to us it means 100% gentrification. Which leads me to my final point on that one, which is this plan is a tool for gentrification. By bringing in household incomes in low-income areas, you raise the cost of living in that neighborhood, and you subsequently push out everybody else. NYCHA and the city seem to be convinced that the only way to save and preserve public housing is by building on the backs of the poor. Alternatives to this plan do exist, and they echo in all of the developments of public housing, and if the city and NYCHA were legitimately engaging the communities, they would hear them. We have the potential to win back streams of funding from the city, the state, and the federal, but we cannot move forward in regaining these sources of funding without addressing the mismanagement of these funds by NYCHA. After all, part of the reason that led to the disinvestment of public housing was the mismanagement of these funds. So maybe more resident engagement in those areas can prevent that. Residents feel that the duty of revitalizing public housing should no longer be imposed on the backs of the poor, low-income families. We live in a society where social welfare is criticized, yet corporate welfare is deemed necessary. In the height of the financial crisis, the federal budget allocated enough money to repair all of NYCHA many times over, and instead it handed it over to Wall Street. Here's the solution to the evident crisis. Impose stronger taxes on these corporations and offshore banking, which allows multi-billion-dollar industries to siphon tax money out of our country. This money should be used to defend, improve, and expand public housing. Why hasn't this been truly considered? And why isn't it an option? So you cannot persuade us into believing that the only answer to solving this housing crisis issue will be solved by building affordable housing, by collecting rent more efficiently, and by leasing off public land to private developers.
Thank you, Mr. Ahmed.
The time for change is now, and we will continue to organize and build power citywide. And anybody interested, please contact me later on. We have alternatives. Thank you.
Next, we have Pearl Barkley. Please be mindful of the clock. I do not wish to cut anybody off, but we have a long speakers list. Thank you.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. My name is Pearl Barkley. I want to start out by saying I'm an American citizen. I'm a resident of Thomas Jefferson Houses and a member of Community Voices Heard. I'm not going to get all into numbers and facts and figures. My statement will be based on morality. I would like to start out by saying that until this society begins to embrace the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, which insists that housing is a human right, we're going to have problems. The aims and objectives of the real estate development industry are in direct opposition to this goal, and despite being well-meaning, NYCHA is desperately joining the bandwagon. As per NYCHA's Next Generation Plan, affordable is not affordable and will not be affordable for what is termed extremely low income or the very low income families and individuals. As the economy is not likely to change drastically, where everyone will be making the minimum of approximately $46,000 per year for a family of three, where will the extremely low income and very low income families and individuals go? A probable place will be the shelter system, the new Jack Poor houses of today. By the way, according to recent data, New York City spent $251 million over a 5-year period in shelters not fit for human beings. Public housing, now this is on infill, public housing in many instances was designed with open spaces between buildings for adequate air circulation. Why was this part of the design? People were dying in the droves from tuberculosis and cholera and overcrowded conditions of slums prior to public housing being built. In general, New York City is crowded enough, as is public housing. How many more people need to be packed in an area of space in the name of development? Do extremely low income and very low income people have a right to go outside and sit on a bench and breathe? Although the plan looks good and sounds good, following the plan will lead society backwards, creating the very problems which led to the creation of public housing in the first place. We have learned from the Reagan administration that the trickle-down theory just doesn't work. Many Americans pride themselves in living in the best of all possible worlds, to quote Voltaire's perpetually optimistic Dr. Pangloss. The struggle to preserve public housing, the truly best thing since sliced bread, provides evidence that we are living in hypocrisy against the very values that we proclaim to be good. At this point, we have to ask ourselves, are we or are we not a civilized society?
Next, we have Roxanne Reed, followed by Kevin Singley.
I'm going to say it like Albert Hitchcock says, good evening to everybody. My name is Roxanne Reed. I'm from Castle Hill Houses in the Bronx, and I'm also a member of Community Voices Heard, and I'm going to make it short and brief. I'm going to say no, because, first of all, we don't need no extra buildings built up in our area in front of us where we have to look into other people's windows, and that is very uncalled for, and I don't think it's right. And what are we going to do if they have it built? What's going to happen to us when they build these buildings? Where are we going to go? Okay? I think it's sad that this is happening. And I think that things should be done better than what's happening now. And I'm going to make this short and brief, like I said. And another thing I'm going to bring up, we need to work on what's going on with the mold issue in public housing, because a lot of people has been dying from the mold. I have a resident in my complex right now that's real sick and been in and out of the hospital of the mold issue. This mold issue got to be worked on. You think we got a problem now with this airborne thing going on? Y'all better start working on with the molds in these projects, because we might be getting it too. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin Singley and then Ann Valdez.
Greetings, my name is Kevin Singley. I'm from Castle Hill Houses, a member of Community Voices Heard. I've been a resident for 40 years. I've watched people die of respiratory and asthma illnesses. My first childhood friend died when I was 13. It was like the three of us on the floor, so now it was just two stooges. NYCHA has defunded us for years. I'm new to trying to understand this whole process of being involved with making decisions and helping NYCHA help us. So the thing is, the corporate funding that the corporate money, excuse me, I'm new, and this is, we get caught up. So, right now, I'm jobless, so I think I represent the poorest of NYCHA's residents. How does NYCHA reach out to us? Y'all said that we was gonna get the journal in the mail, but we don't get the journal. And for those of us that don't have internet service, we can't access the internet as fast or as frequently as others. They stopped us from going to the rent office, so we don't have to go to the rent office to make complaints. So if we go to the rent office, only time we go to the rent office is if we have a problem. So we don't have to go to the rent office for any other reason except for problems. You know, to get information is not convenient for residents, especially handicapped and disabled residents, to just go to the rent office and pick up information. Infill destroys our quality of life that many are used to. The sun, the air, the water, the view, all of this is going against all of us residents. What does that say about the poorest? I thought NYCHA was developed for the poorest, for the low-income residents, and all I hear is y'all trying to bring in more affluent people to close your deficit gap, but you're not taking in consideration us lower income and poorest residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Ann Valdez, followed by John Johnson. Ann Valdez, John Johnson, and then G. Renee Harrison.
Good evening, Board. Yes, good evening, everyone. How you doing? First, I want to start with OpMom. OpMom, in my estimation, is not working at all, not a little bit. When the initial training was given to the managers and to the supers, we asked for the resident leaders to receive the same training so we can be on the same page, a level playing field. We never received that training. The managers are not reaching out to us. They are not meeting with us on a regular basis. They are eliminating us out of the process. Me personally, when I go to my management office, if I'm going to be treated as equal, I have to sit in the waiting area and wait to be buzzed in. Everyone else comes in and they go immediately into the office, which is not fair at all. Section 3. Some people were talking about Section 3 before me. Section 3 is a mandate by the federal government, 1968. Training and economic opportunities. We are not receiving jobs when it comes to Section 3 and or training. The New York City Housing Authority signed the PLA. And in signing that PLA, what the contractors are saying now at the meetings is, the Housing Authority has a PLA in place for the union, so we're not hiring you. I personally witnessed this in Harlem River houses on a number of occasions, meetings that I sat in myself. Being the Section 3 representative for the city, this should not be happening. Our residents are not receiving the jobs and or training that they should be receiving. Somebody talked about rent collection. I don't know if anybody on the board is aware, but the company that you hired again to collect the rent stole millions of dollars from NYCHA residents. And somebody, unbeknownst, hired them again. The same company that stole millions of dollars. I don't understand why they were hired again. There needs to be true engagement. Ms. McKay spoke about Patterson houses. I've been talking about Patterson houses for a while with no ramps. That's against the law. They have no ramps to get up into the buildings, none whatsoever. There's nothing in the plans for these ramps to be built in Patterson houses. When the residents come out to go shopping, to go to church, just to enjoy the weather, it's a huge inconvenience for them. Like she said, she had to pay someone $3 to carry groceries. A senior on a fixed income. That should never happen. This word affordability, I don't like this word affordability. If I make $20,000 a year and one of you make $200,000 a year, I can't afford to live where you live. It should not be utilized no more. That word should be eliminated from NYCHA, affordability. We cannot afford to live where other people live with the money that we are making or the lack of money that we are making. Stop using that word affordability. TPA funds should not be utilized on NYCHA's behalf without engaging the residents. Under no circumstances. There's already 40% coming out for admin fees, and we are receiving less administration. We are told to do everything now pertaining to a proposal when we go somewhere. Before, the Housing Authority did it as a part of the admin fees. They're not doing it anymore. We're being told to do everything. There's nothing wrong with us being self-sufficient, but if the money is being expended for admin fees, I would like to know why. We need to really, truly create open communication with the residents. The resident leadership needs to know what's truly going on. That's what 964 says. The residents should be aware of what's going on, not as advocates, but as policymakers. It's written in the regs in 964. We shouldn't just be giving advice or coming to a meeting and a piece of paper is handed to us. We are to be aware of what's going on. We are to be at that table making decisions. Once you think about it, we are supposed to be involved. And that's the way it should be, to make a harmonious NYCHA. There shouldn't be adversarial relationships going on. A lady spoke a little while ago about CCOP. I'm a member of CCOP. In my district in the Bronx South, I disseminate information all the time, to the point where I was asked not to disseminate information no more. I disseminate information all of the time. That's what information is for, to inform. Please take into consideration, we need communication. We need a two-way communication. Lines are open all the time, not sometime, not when it's beneficial for the authority and not for the residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker number 18, G. Renee Harrison, followed by speaker number 19, Rosalind Jones.
Good evening, panel. Peace and blessings. I am G. Renee Harrison, a 39-year resident of Ralph J. Rangel houses. I have 5 major concerns. Number one is the parking at Greatstone. I mean, it's despicable. You have all the NYCHA employees parking in the residential parking spaces, so therefore they're not renting out the spaces to the residents. That's number one. The Section 3, yes, it is supposed to be for the residents for training to move to employment. I've been on my TA board for 6 years, and because I am opinionated and speaks my mind, they got rid of me off the board, but it's not a problem. Any president here from Wrangle Houses at all? Because she never makes any of the meetings. But anyway, let's continue. I had 8 resumes. I said to the president, I need to connect with you to give you these resumes. These people have their OSHA license. They want to work. Nepotism, no one got a job to work on any of these construction sites and Wrangle Houses but the president, Miss McNair's son, Christopher Williams. Okay? This is a no-no. If we're representing 964 families, that's what we should be doing. Disseminating information and making sure everybody's on the same page. That's not going on in Wrangle. Okay? Another concern that I have. You're doing initiative program over in Polo Grounds. Madam Chair, I spoke to you personally last week, congratulated you back at work on your new baby girl. The concerns is our LD lighting. The initiative is in the Polo Grounds, but when you turn the bright lights on, the roaches run. So where is all the crime running? To Wrangle Houses. We've had a child killed. We've had robberies. I mean, we have no cameras in the elevators. The robbery, the crime is going up. I'd like to know, with all this money, when are we getting on piggybacking Wrangle Houses off of the initiative program with Polo Grounds? Another major concern I'm having is my TA president, Ms. McNair, she doesn't like any suggestions from any board members for any resident. She wants to do her own thing. Mr. Williams, Leroy Williams, he's the #1 that knows what goes on with my TA president, okay? Yes, I'm putting him on blast because people like me, I'm there for everyone. Every tenant I represent, that's what I sworn in an oath to do the job for, not just certain particular ones. This is what's going on in Wrangle. I wish, Mr. Michael Kelly, you make a personal appointment with me to sit down with you one-on-one. I talked about this last week with you in front of Polo Grounds. I ain't hear from you yet, okay? These are the things that the two-way conversation should be at all times. Y'all make decisions, bring it to us as the tenants. We're the best known. That's our mansions. I've been there 39 years. Y'all have afforded me to live the way I want to live, have my vehicle, have anything that I like. I've been a 23-year city employee. I'm disabled now. It might not show, it's not visible, but I'm disabled. Don't make us third-class people. I'm born and raised here. 52 years of my life, I don't know nowhere else to go. I've raised my children. My son has served the U.S. Army 18 years. He's a lifer, coming out in 18 months. I have a young child. He has his own child and family. Don't make it. I'm the next senior. This lady's 85, this lady's 86. I'm the next one behind them. Don't tell me about the next generation and you're not getting it together for my generation. So what happens when I'm on a walker next? I have a herniated disc. I mean, when I be on the walker next,
Thank you,
I
Ms.
need
Harrison.
you all to answer and give us answers from NYCHA. Thank you.
Thank you. Rosalind Jones, followed by Councilmember Rosie Mendez.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Rosalind Jones. I live in Polo Grounds Towers.
Check, 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 check.
My name is Rosalind Jones. I live in Polo Grounds Towers. I've been there for almost 40 years or more. I've been complaining about people that don't respect the senior citizens that live in housing. I have people that live upstairs over me. They've been over there 15 years. They jump, stomp, scream, run all over me. They have made me have 3 strokes. And that's not right. I feel like they act like senior citizens don't have a right to anything. I've been speaking to these people, housing, my manager, the police department, 311. I've called everybody and don't know who else to talk to. I can't sleep at night because they're making noise at 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning. I need somebody to please show me how to stay alive, because this is not right. If I have another stroke, I could die. And nobody seems to say, well, there's nothing we can do about them. Why not? You hold the lease on me because I have to pay my rent. They don't pay for my apartment, but they're using my apartment. When they make that noise that they make upstairs, they are using my apartment. And I think that's very wrong. I like living. Until a couple of months ago, I was walking fine. May 4th, I had my 3rd stroke. And that's not fair. Housing need to do something in respect to the senior citizens. They have a right to sleep just as well as everybody else. They throw food out the window. They threw food on water, buckets of water into my air conditioner. And nobody has done anything about it. They pee out the window, the men, the boys that's up there, they pee out the window. I see this. If you see a golden arch coming from the sun, you know what that is. They need to fix these things. She is just as responsible for her kids as I was for mine. I raised all 4 of my kids in housing, and they have never done nothing. One of my kids wrote on the wall, and I made him stand out there and scrub all of that off the wall. We didn't keep the 15th floor was one of the cleanest floors in the building. And I'm here also representing New York City for Change, and we need some help on trying to get senior citizens treated with respect. I worked for this city for years in the Board of Education as well as in HHC. And what made me have the stroke, the first one, was housing, not sleeping. Now I'm on disability. I can't live like I used to. And that's all because of this woman and her kids. They holler down the steam pipe that I am a crackhead. I am 66 years old. My kids are grown. I don't allow them to disrespect seniors. And she should not be calling it. That's defaming my character.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Councilmember Rosie Mendez, followed by Debrella Nesbitt.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rosie Mendez. I'm the councilwoman for District 2 in Manhattan. And I'm the former chair of the Committee on Public Housing. I'm a sitting member, and more importantly, 24 years proud resident of Williamsburg Houses. So I understand NYCHA's immense needs for operating and capital funds. I understand that NYCHA is moving forward with infill development as a way to raise much-needed capital dollars. And I understand the needs of NYCHA and its residents. And I recognize that this plan is related to what is our first priority, residents and their quality of life. But what I don't understand is how substantially different this infill plan is from Mayor Bloomberg's infill plan. Under the Bloomberg plan, my district was slated to get mixed income housing and market rate development at 3 different housing complexes. A proposed project was going to have 100% market rate, another one 100% affordable, and then the others were 80-20 and 50-50 in my district. So to me, it appears that this is what's going to happen. We're going to have 100% affordable at some sites and then we're going to have more market rate units at other sites. And I fear, because I live in Manhattan and it's the cash-rich, borough, that all the market rate units are going to be put in our borough, and that ain't right. And if I'm mistaken, then I welcome the opportunity to meet with NYCHA staff so you can disabuse me of this notion. I have tried to keep an open mind about infill housing, but I want NYCHA, and I implore you to implement 2 New York City Council resolutions that we passed in 2013 unanimously. Resolution 1719 of 2013 elicited 22 specific requests, including provisions that implored NYCHA to engage residents so they can be fundamentally informed, supported, empowered to make decisions as to whether to support or oppose any proposed infill development. In addition, Resolution 1770 of 2013 strongly supported the passage of what we call the NYCHA Real Property Public Review Act. It would have created a ULURP provision for any NYCHA disposition. While NYCHA has made some modifications to its infill plan, you have not consented to ULURP review and redesigning the consultation process to truly empower residents and tap into knowledge that residents would need to be fully informed. So I want meaningful attempts to partner with residents, and I want it to be completely executed and realized. Equally important, NYCHA should implement a significant amendment process for any change that will potentially affect a resident's tenancy so that a review period and a public hearing is required. This would include changes in housing tenancy policy, such as demolition and disposition plans. Oftentimes, I have found that NYCHA considers a change to not be a significant amendment, yet it has a major impact on many residents' tenancies. In fact, this was the case earlier this year when NYCHA decided to sell 50% of its ownership in 6 of its project-based Section 8 housing. The affected tenants did not even know their buildings were project-based Section 8 because it was owned and managed by NYCHA as traditional public housing. Worse is that 2 of the 6 developments never got a hearing, were never informed until after the sale of the developments when a notice was posted in their building. This never would have happened if NYCHA had followed the process for significant amendment. So I want to talk a little bit more. Parking fees. So you're going to charge more depending on the area. That means my residents in my borough will be paying more money for parking, and that ain't right. There should be a sliding scale fee. And so if you don't have enough money, you pay on the lower end. If you have more money, you pay on the higher end, irrespective of borough. I think it is the right thing to do, and you won't get penalized just because of where you live. So,
thank you, Councilmember Mendez.
I just want to say one thing. I support many of the recommendations by the New York City Alliance to Preserve Public Housing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Debrella Nesbitt, followed by Myers from Patterson Houses.
I'm going to go check now. Yep, that way.
Good afternoon, Chairperson, General Manager, and other leaders. I would like to bring to your attention what Ms. Hudson read that we were meeting for. And one of the things she said was there was to be input from the residents. She didn't say residents over 40,000. She didn't say residents under 40,000. She didn't say resident leaders, and she didn't say certain boroughs. So that would mean all residents. And based on what she read, you're not in compliance because we did not have any input. We should have been there before the first word was written. There's no evidence that we had any input. You draft the plan, and you're limiting our response to your plans. And there's also evidence that you did not listen to any of the amendments, because the same book you had in the beginning is the same one. There were no amendments, or the book would have changed as you met with each one. I myself offered amendments, and I did not receive a notice from you that you thought about it or that you was aware of it, or thank you. There's no evidence that you are listening to the residents and that you are including them, and this will be an issue that I will take before HUD. Thank you.
Myers from Patterson, followed by Siegel Singh.
Good afternoon. My name is Myers. I'm from Patterson Housing. I would like to talk about maybe 6 things. Number 1, Patterson houses, we have grass growing around it. I spoke on this earlier. We don't have no one to cut it. The grass is like a jungle. Okay? Also, the lighting, outdoor and indoors lighting around the perimeter need to be fixed. We don't have lighting at them. I spoke earlier about we don't have a community center. We're still in the basement. When it rains, it floods in that thing. We need a community center. All the other developments have gotten a new community center. Patterson haven't gotten nothing from here. Okay, next we need new boilers. We haven't even had a boiler over 30 years. But yet still I see in this thing that you have a capital budget where you have, just in general, you have lighting to fix the boiler in one development. You're putting up, I think it's 1 million something for boilers. And in St. Nicholas Housing, you're doing the same thing. But Patterson haven't had a boiler over 30 years. Every year it comes around, they say, well, we're going to do it. We're going to put a boiler in. When it's cold in Patterson. But no one from this committee here think about putting in a new boilers. And this is going on 30 years. The boiler that's been there happened to be there longer than 30 years, but I'm just losing 30 years. So we need that development. We need something. Also, we need the bricks to be pointed in the outside of the building. The bricks haven't been pointed over 30 years. When it rains hard, it pours in these apartments. And they sent a guy, I think, one day last week. They said, hey, go and point the building. He said, well, they give me some spray to spray the outside, and that might stop the leak. No, that's not true. But somewhere from housing told the guy to go and spray the outside, stick out the window and spray it. Then this way you patronize the tenant. This way that the tenant will figure that you're doing something. But that's not doing it. What you need is someone to come and point that whole development. Okay? Now, I see where they're getting sandbags in Coney Island, and you're spending millions there. That same millions that you're paying for sandbag, you can also get the boiler for Patterson Housing.
Thank you, Mr. Myers.
Okay, one more thing. We also were talking about that ramp for the senior citizens. You can do it. You're spending money for all the other things, and this is in your report, in your capital budget. The money that you're spending is unnecessary.
Siegel Singh from State Senator Brad Holman's office, followed by Cindy T.
Hi, my name is Sejal Singh. I'm an aide to State Senator Brad Hoyleman. He regrets that he can't be here today, but I'll be presenting testimony on his behalf. Senator Hoyleman represents New York State's 27th District, which includes Campos Plaza 1 and 2, Jacob Riis Houses 1 and 2, 344 East 28th Street, Fulton Houses, Lower East Side 3, Lower East Side 5, and parts of Harborview Terrace and Elliott Chelsea Houses, all together representing nearly 5,000 units of public housing. As a representative for these communities, Senator Hoyleman is firmly committed to preserving and maintaining New York's public housing stock. We want to thank the mayor and NYCHA for steps that they've taken thus far, and we want to especially thank Borough President Brewer for hosting a series of town halls on the Next Generation Plan, and the many NYCHA residents who we've been meeting with and who have shared their thoughtful suggestions and questions with our office. I understand that time is short, so I want to focus on several points in particular. We are deeply concerned about the long-term sustainability of our public housing stock. The NextGen plan calls for scattered site developments to be sold to nonprofits and for distressed towers in the park-style developments to be converted to under new ownership structures using the Federal Office of Housing and Urban Development's Rental Assistance Demonstration Program. We believe that while RAD can be a valuable tool to upgrade our aging buildings, we believe it is critical that it be used in ways that are consistent with the preservation and not the privatization of public housing in New York. NYCHA should maintain the strongest possible role in new ownership structures and lease rather than sell public land to private investors. We also believe it is essential that residents and their representatives are informed as soon as possible which developments may be classified as scatter sites and sold. We are disappointed that NYCHA has yet to release a list of developments that it expects to be affected. Transparency in the NextGen plan is essential. Elected officials and NYCHA residents cannot be expected to respond to this plan in a comprehensive fashion without these key details, and we urge that this information be distributed as soon as possible. Lastly, we strongly support the recommendation for a 25% preference for homeless families in all new units constructed through the infill plan. As rising rents have forced record numbers of families into the shelter system, this is more necessary than ever. And we also encourage the use of Section 8 vouchers to ensure affordability, deep affordability, including for families who make less than $46,000 a year in these units. Thank you for your consideration of these comments. We have full comments in writing available to anyone who'd like a copy. We look forward to continued work with the city administration and with NYCHA on these critical changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Cindy T., followed by Sandra Shepard.
Good evening, members of the Board of the New York City Housing Authority. My name is Cindy G., and I'm here on behalf of United Neighborhood Houses, New York City's Federation of Settlement Houses and Community Centers. UNH is part of the Alliance to Preserve Public Housing and supports the position paper, but I will focus my comments tonight on the work of settlement houses and human service providers in public housing. In the last 2 years, there have been two major expansions to the role of community-based organizations in NYCHA developments. This year, community-based organizations have taken over community centers and senior centers previously operated directly by NYCHA. While there are concerns about this transition, we are confident that community-based organizations working in partnership with residents can effectively meet community needs and improve the services available for NYCHA residents. This year, the Department of Youth and Community Development added 24 new cornerstone programs. These programs are loosely modeled on the settlement house model and provide multi-generational services. While they emphasize youth services and after-school programs, they have the flexibility and latitude to design additional programs specific to their communities. Moreover, the Department of Aging has contracted 17 new community-based organizations to operate senior centers, centers that are able to provide services and diverse activities that NYCHA centers are not funded for, including meal programs, art, and exercise programs. For the second year in a row, settlement houses and other community-based organizations were part of Mayor de Blasio's plan to increase public safety in NYCHA developments. In particular, UNH is pleased that the plan includes extending community center hours in public housing developments, creating an open space for youth to be safe, and investing in 850 new summer youth employment program jobs for young people living in NYCHA developments. We are committed to work with the city, NYCHA, and resident groups to ensure that high-quality community programs are available for public housing residents. UNH makes the following recommendations. 1. Expedite repairs in community facilities. In some cases, the City Council has already allocated funds for repairs, but NYCHA has not acted to make the needed improvements. UNH urges NYCHA to expedite repairs on community facilities so that providers can offer programs in safe and comfortable spaces. Second, designate a NYCHA staff member who can be the main point of contact for CBOs working in each development. Providers often have challenges working with NYCHA on issues like repairs, operating times, and other facility problems. UNH urges NYCHA to designate a staff member for each development who can work with the provider to resolve these issues. Thank you for listening to us tonight and for your work and for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Sandra Shepard, followed by Joshua Barnett. Joshua Barnett.
Good evening. My name is Josh Barnett, and I'm a NYCHA employee. Since 1999, I've been an architect in the Office of Design and Capital Projects Division, and I'm also a union-proud member, Local 375, DC 37 AFSCME. I support the New York City Alliance position on guaranteeing affordable housing. Private money into public housing is dangerous. RED has already made serious inroads into public housing nationally, and private money is already strangling the city's parks, museums, libraries, and schools. But there's a lot more of concern in NextGen NYCHA that needs to be addressed. There are some good points like recycling, but if this goes forward, this plan is going to be last generation NYCHA, not next generation NYCHA. Because this is putting NYCHA very firmly on the road towards privatization. That's the last place we want to go. What's key about NextGen NYCHA is not only what it says, but what it doesn't say. It doesn't say who will upkeep public housing after an additional 1,000 employees are lost, and this is on top of the 4,000 staff already lost over the last 15 years, and it's the residents who pay the price for that. A cornerstone of this plan should be hiring an additional 1,000 employees, groundskeepers, maintenance staff, skilled trades, construction professionals, social service workers, and many NYCHA residents are ready, willing, and able to do this work. And if we do need to downsize, how about we look at management? I work on the inside. NYCHA is the most top-heavy organization anybody's ever seen. Every week there are announcements of newly created six-figure positions for special assistants and vice presidents, while the office and field staff are struggling with a skeleton crew. And above all, please, it's about time, downsize the consultants. Any member of privatization and outsourcing is completely missing from NextGen NYCHA. If you call up consultant on the NYCHA directory, over 100 names appear. All the FEMA design work is being outsourced. NYCHA has never submitted to New York City Local Law 63 that requires a cost-benefit analysis to guarantee that outsourcing is actually saving money. Permanent staff are needed, and we do the work better at half the cost. We know NYCHA is underfunded. We need to tax Wall Street. We need the defense budget to build homes and not drones. But in the meantime, while we fight for that, NYCHA is making the worst of a bad situation. What happens to NYCHA affects everyone in the city swamp by gentrification. Please stop hiring managers and consultants. Start hiring workers and NYCHA residents. Don't bring in private development money. It always comes with strings attached, and it never ends well. Fight for more funding and send the available funding to the residents and hiring more staff. Otherwise, 10 years from now, when this is called NYCHA Incorporated, we'll all be wondering what happened to our jobs and our homes.
Thank you. A.M. Goodridge, followed by Michael Higgins.
Good evening. On my behalf, for the Occupy Wall Street movement, and of course myself representing Crown Heights Tenant Union. So I'm in Goodridge, representing the Occupy Wall Street movement. But also we heard about the privatization of because I represent the three boundaries: Northwest Brooklyn, Central Brooklyn, and North Brooklyn as well. So privatization, and of course, could be the recipe for corruption, and then between the lines. So other residents, what about you have like senior housing? What about retirement housing for people who have to work hard for year to year till you reach the age of 65 years or older? It's like, what about you have to put retirement or senior housing or the housing for the veterans who served in the wars? Every single time we go to defense to serve for World War I, II. Now we have Iraq and Afghanistan whatsoever. So what about the housing for the veteran? They have to be the solution to solve the real problem instead of going to bank, corporation, and special interest to kicking people out. That's totally dead wrong. You have to do it, tax Wall Street, tax the bank and the lender to make sure to get the funding that we needed. But also to the young people, to the young folk that they're struggling to make ends meet, where they have to get the job after they graduate college or high school. The solution to grab $15 an hour living wage and have a real union by ourselves. This is a solution that is not a game. This is a solution to survive. How many families been on welfare? A dozen. And more 6,000 family homelessness, especially children, they wait for the list for public housing. Do you know how long it takes to apply for public housing to live in the city? Do you know how long it takes? Long time. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So there's a solution to put an end to the homelessness, end of the neglected. And of course, the crime and public safety is another issue. There's like no job for youth, no program, no recreation facility, and the neglected and underserved community, and especially rapidly gentrified areas. So the solution to the people of the 99%, so we can stand up and fight to make sure that I respect the New York City Alliance for Public Housing and the real rent reform to do our part to make sure we stand up for the 99%. All day, all week, occupy Wall Street.
Thank you. Michael Higgins, followed by Lisa Kenner.
Good evening, Chairwoman. Good evening, panel. My name is Michael Higgins, Jr. I'm an organizer for FURY, Families United for Racial and Economic Equality. We are a member-led organization, mostly senior women of color who live in public housing around downtown Brooklyn. I know there are a lot of people that are coming after me, so I'll try to make this brief. FURY agrees with the positions held by the NYC Alliance to Preserve Public Housing, some of which include all housing developed on NYCHA land should provide affordable housing to low-income New Yorkers, except where residents and NYCHA agree to a mixed-income model that includes market rate rentals. Admissions that give preference to current NYCHA residents and the homeless. A release of the list of developments designated as scattered site or obsolete that will be shifted from NYCHA to nonprofit developers. The creation of a central steering group, which will include resident leaders, NYCHA, and other community stakeholders to drive the current NYCHA Next Gen process at other developments. And that TPA funds must be set aside on an annual basis to train NYCHA resident leaders. Such training should be carried out by independent providers and not NYCHA. Many of NYCHA's proposals within the Next Generation Plan place great emphasis on resident leadership and engagement for the successful execution. We are glad that NYCHA is interested in creating consensus with residents, but we feel that the current model of engagement available to residents is stagnant and in serious need of consideration. In addition to an allocation of TPA funds for leadership development, some of our members also believe that within the OPMOM program to be used to address the overwhelming demand for repairs and developments across the city, there's a need for a different kind of resident representation that includes the breadth of those who live in NYCHA, who are often not currently present in current tenant leadership, including youth, the disabled, and non-native English speakers. There should be a clear framework for how customer service is quantified that may be accessible to residents and that may be used to measure the effectiveness of NYCHA's proposals for needed repairs. That residents should have the option to play some role in the day-to-day management of the developments they live in, and that funding should be considered to facilitate the training necessary to do so. That community stakeholders have an active role in the creation of a pipeline that enables current residents access to the training and skills necessary to participate in the building trades as to their accountability to Section 3, and an oversight body that should be created that is accountable to the fulfillment of these demands and the needs of public housing residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa Kenner, followed by William Smith.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Kenner. I'm the president of Van Dyke Houses. So I had to come out. First of all, we're already getting a building built on Mother Gaston's, a low-income supportive housing. Now you want to come back with the next generation and put another building on Dumont, 220 units, which would be about 30 floors. That's not good. You know, They ain't right. My thing is that you have to take care of what you're doing first. Now, I'm still waiting for that $1.8 million to sit down because I sat down with residents, so we're going to see how we're going to spend it. You can't put a new building and you got 22 buildings need painted, doors need painted, everything else. Then you're going to cause a conflict among the other people who's coming in the new building. But my thing is, I'm not saying that the other building shouldn't come. It shouldn't come right now. That means that we'll have 2 buildings being built. And really, we only even didn't get 1 built yet. Now, I'm waiting for Mr. Crawley and whoever else is supposed to come to this table with that $1.8 million. I don't want to see the money disappear and they say the money's not here, because we know money disappeared. But I'm also want you to understand that you have to take care of what you have now. Now, low income and supportive housing, we was for it, because kids need to go to school. They need to have a roof over their head and be able to get up in the morning and go to school. Van Dyke was built about families. Public housing was about families. And when we start getting away from that, we're going to lose all our developments. But you cannot come and build another building on Dumont, take up the parking lot and take up half of the whole. You can't do it. I'm not going to let you do it, because I'm going to sit there, because I've been living there for 56 years. I was born and raised. Van Dyke is 60 years old. I'm a stakeholder, and there's other stakeholders too. But that's was one of the main things I want to say. There's other things to say, but it's mainly people look like it target us because they want to say we're a poverty-stricken area. We're not a poverty-stricken area. We just ain't got no money. But we are people with morals. We care about where we live. And you know, I have to, I used to say we're protective people. We're not people that try to take over. We're very protective about where we live. I know I am. I know I am, and I know a lot of people is here too, because otherwise we wouldn't have came out at 5:30, 6 o'clock tonight, and then you're going back home by 8:30, 9 o'clock, if you didn't care. But there's the thing about, you got to come together. It's more than a paycheck, because I know we don't get no paycheck. And I know I work 7 days a week sometimes. And my sister said, you must be crazy. I said, but you forgot. Mommy told us, if you don't take care of where you live, nobody else going to take care of it.
Thank you, Ms. Kenna. William Smith, speaker number 30, followed by Joyce Bryant, speaker number 32.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Madam Chair and the board, for putting this together. So good to see everyone out here as a community holding both sides accountable. So it's very good. Everyone's been talking about the RAD conversion and the pilot project at Ocean Bay Houses, and many stakeholders are anxious to get some further information from NYCHA and HUD on what would happen if RAD converted property were to go into default or fall into foreclosure. At Manhattan Borough President's NextGen Town Hall, the same question was asked, but there was no answer provided. So we'd like to see that answer delivered, both in written form and delivered to the residents, because it's a really important question. With the financial crisis that hit in 2008, and we're still dealing with the tremors of that, and we know that the housing market had a very big part in that. It's important that we know what will happen when RAD converted property has a federally insured mortgage, because it's built up with the premise that it taps into private capital, which is good, but it's also not so good because it privatizes development. So if we're going to transition some of our developments into this new pilot program, we want to know what will happen if it falls into foreclosure. Thank you.
Thank you. Joyce Bryant, then Deirdre Fogel. Joyce Bryant. Okay, we'll move on to Deirdre Fogel.
Good evening, everybody. I'm representing Tompkins Houses. I'm a resident there. I've been there for the last about 10 years, and over the last 10 years that I've been there, they had a pipe burst on the roof some years ago. To this day, I'm still having water damage from that pipe that burst. And it's not just me, it's the whole building. It's damages in the walls, the kitchen, even to the outlets, which is a fire hazard. Also, there's, it's water, mold and mildew in the kitchen cabinets. That's how bad it is. And this is where we have to put our dishes, our food, and things like that. It's a dangerous situation. Another thing I wanted to speak about is the garbage and the incinerators. They continuously close the incinerators because they have rats and stuff in the basement. The workers refuse to go down there. So therefore, they put garbage bags on the incinerator doors with the incinerator's locked. The garbage is sitting there overnight and until the housing workers come the next day to take out the garbage. But the thing with this is they afraid of the rats being in the basement, but we have to deal with it on the floors. So another issue is because of the water and mildew, we have children that is getting sick, asthma and other sicknesses that they never had before. This is not even about me and my family. It's about my community, my building. Because I'm not the only one that has lived there. This is people that have been living there for years that I didn't even know about this meeting this afternoon. I just found out about it from making a phone call to Pastor Reverend Taylor. I called his church to ask the question, and that's how I found out about this meeting tonight. And this was not even 3, I just found out about 4 o'clock this evening. At 4 o'clock this evening, I found out about this meeting, and here I am. Because I needed to speak about these issues that we're having in Tompkins Houses. On that said, thank you.
Thank you. Jacqueline Young, followed by Zarice Huff.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jacqueline Young. I'm the Resident Association President for Lenox Road Houses in Brooklyn. I shook your hand, General Manager Kelly, at the last town hall meeting, right in the lobby, where I spoke to you about our executive board just being placed into the board after not having a resident association in over 14 years. I also indicated to you that we did not have an office space to conduct our administrative work. So respectively, I've gone from management, Mr. Calandrello, I spoke to Ms. Hart, I spoke to you. Respectfully, your chief of staff did get back to me in an email by indicating we are looking into your concerns and we will respond shortly. That was on July 15th. Today is August the 11th, and I still have not heard from her or from you. There was some roof repair issues that I spoke to you about because when it was discussed about the 5-year capital plan in the last town hall meeting, our buildings were not on that list. However, someone did come out, they fixed the bulkhead, they took care of those repairs. There's still some work that need to be done, but they did start the work. However, no one has addressed the fact that I need an office for our executive board and myself to work in. Now, I kind of figured it out myself why no one is addressing this issue. Lenox Road Houses is a scatter site housing in Brooklyn. So, no one has ever answered the question as to, is Lenox Road Housing going to be a part of the scatter site housing following Ocean Bay, part of the RAD program? Is Lenox Road Houses going to be sold and managed by someone else? No one has answered that question. Is that the reason why no one will let us know whether or not we can use that office? The office is in our building across from the community room. It has not been, I've lived in the building 21 years. The office has not been used and is still currently not being used by anyone. However, no one would like for our executive board to use this office. When we have resident associated meetings, we have to do the paperwork on our jobs because some of the leaders don't have computers in their homes. This is not right. About your low-income housing and about your moderate-income housing, I know about all of this. I've been managing property tax credit housing for over 20 years.
Thank you, Ms. Young.
I just need to know, are we going to get an office? And maybe you can address it, Chair Lady, because no one else seems to want to answer that question for me. Thank you.
Doris Huff, followed by William Frazier.
Hello? Oh, okay. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, panel. My first question is, well, not question. The Department of Buildings has declared Building 641 and 643 of Campos Plaza unsafe and dangerous because of falling debris. I called last week at Housing, and I wasn't getting no answers until 2 days later when somebody finally came to me and sat down. But I can say, you guys wasn't alerted either. An email went out that Monday. We sat down that Wednesday. So the Department of Buildings declared it unsafe because of the falling debris. But we also have several other issues going on in that building, not just the falling debris. The other issue is we have to get new elevators in 12. We were under a lot of water during Hurricane Sandy. And they are breaking down all the time. Disabled people can't get home. People can't get upstairs with their baby carriages. To me, it's way unacceptable. When tenants call at 10 a.m. in the morning, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, those elevators were still down. That is very unacceptable. When I called at 3 o'clock, buildings were back up by 5. It shouldn't be when the TA president called. 2 hours later, the buildings are back up and running elevators. It should be when anybody calls for those elevators. It is unsafe. I have a lot of elderly in the building, and they were walking up and down stairs. Some guy couldn't even get upstairs with the wheelchair. I put the wheelchair in my tenant organization office. It's getting so bad, it's really, truly unacceptable. My third one is, this is to the police chief. That's the chief down there, right? How you doing? I'm Ms. Huff. This is to you. Can we please sit down and discuss some concerns that I have? You have for the housing bureau, correct? Yeah, I need to get your card today. We need to have a meeting. Thank you. And the last one is, tenants are feeling tenants are feeling a big division because Campos 1 is being beautified and Campos 2 is not. This is really giving me headaches. It's taking me through too much. And I'm sorry. One development is Section 8, the other is housing. It really is dividing us, and it shouldn't divide us. We all family in Campos Plaza with 5 buildings, and 2 buildings are being fixed and the other 3 are not. And I'm getting a lot of grief, headache, pain, chest pain, and I keep telling people, that's not me, that's housing.
Thank you, Ms. Huff.
Okay. Call housing, please. Thank you.
William Frazier.
Good evening. To the audience, I thank you for coming out. To the chair and Diaz Gifts, I thank you for being here and hosting. I understood the moderator to say we shouldn't bring personal issues to the floor. However, most of the issues, because we're addressing the amendment, if I understand the fiscal policy, the new policy. But if you, as you have heard, as I've heard, why that is critical, the issues that people are bringing forth is equally as critical. To be short, very simplistically, NYCHA is in breach of the lease agreement. However, unlike NYCHA, tenants has very little or no recourse, whereas NYCHA could seek to administer harsh policies on tenants to get them evicted, et cetera, et cetera. There's nothing tenants really can do except suffer. And this is what I keep hearing. In terms of the city giving up any property, any land for privatization in part or in whole, that should be a no-no. Right now, the city is being sold to the wealthiest people that can afford to buy it. If the city gives up its property, then eventually there will be no more NYCHA, without saying. This is something that Bloomberg has tried. This is something that Koch has even tried. So we don't need this to happen again. We need to go back and look at what was the mission initially of public housing and follow a mission, an agenda that's conducive to that. Next Generation does not quite suit that. Families are being disenfranchised because of mismanagement more so than anything else. So for an example, where NYCHA wasn't funding the police to police the projects, if you will, or underfunding, we have situations where you have vagrants who are homesteading, drug trafficking, loiterers. The buildings are unsafe for children. Children really cannot go out of their house unescorted. And this is in most of the NYCHA's development that needs to be addressed. We shouldn't have vagrants homesteading on NYCHA property where they bring their personal belongings, they chain it to the fence, they steal carts, they put it in the carts, and they make it unsafe and unsightable for all people. There's other issues that need to be dealt with. This is not the opportunity. I have personal issues to deal with. I hope it be addressed by you, Madam Chair, because the last administration, since February 2012, has not addressed the issues. I hope this will lead to some transparency, efficiencies, but most importantly, that the managerial staff cease being incompetent, cease being condescending.
Thank you, Mr. Frazier.
Cease being unaccountable, cease being arrogant, irresponsible, and harassing.
Thank you, Mr. Frazier.
Thank you.
Next, we have Iris Quinones from Congresswoman Nydia Velasquez's office.
Hi, good evening, everyone. On behalf of Congresswoman Velasquez, I want to thank you for the opportunity to share her comments on NYCHA's draft fiscal year 16 annual plan and the Next Generation NYCHA plan. As one of the most senior members of the House Financial Services Committee and the only member of the Housing and Insurance Subcommittee from New York City, working to expand safe and affordable housing options for New Yorkers is my top priority. I, along with my colleagues in the New York City Congressional Delegation, I have met with NYCHA to discuss our concerns and to share the feedback we have received from resident groups and advocates. While ongoing disinvestment by the federal government has contributed to NYCHA's serious capital needs, the lack of adequate resources from the city and state have also compounded the problem. NYCHA and the de Blasio administration, through the proposals included in these plans, have taken some steps to address the myriad of issues facing NYCHA, particularly as related to its aging housing stock. However, I am concerned that the plans under review today are short on critical details that will determine whether some of these proposed policies will best meet the needs of our community. NYCHA calls for an expanded use of HUD's Rental Assistance Demonstration, RAD program, to attract private investment for improvements to NYCHA's housing stock. While this may be a useful tool, NYCHA must provide more details about how it plans to use RAD. Should the program be expanded? For example, it is critical that NYCHA engage residents before any RAD deals informally pursue. Among the details that NYCHA should share is information about ownership structure plans to pursue in a public-private partnership, such as RAD. It is critical that NYCHA maintain sufficient control over decisions made and converted properties, which can be achieved through NYCHA retention of the ground lease for all properties that are converted. The de Blasio administration is once again pursuing the development of housing on NYCHA land. The proposal included in the NextGeneration NYCHA plan includes requirements that a portion of units be affordable to some degree. However, some serious questions must be answered. First, how does NYCHA plan to ensure that units included in new developments will be deeply affordable, particularly if additional subsidies are not available?
Thank you, Ms. Quinones. We'll accept your written statement.
Thank you. Congresswoman, thank you.
We have two more speakers.
Second, for how long will affordability restrictions apply? While the initial RFP calls for a rent-stabilized period of 30 years, NYCHA should work to find ways to require a longer affordability period, such as affordability through the life of this lease. Finally, while NYCHA mentions that Section 3 will apply for jobs created through these proposals, NYCHA's Section 3 efforts have fallen short in the past. NYCHA should submit meaningful and substantive plans to ensure that NYCHA residents benefit from any job opportunities created by these plans. And thank you so much for the opportunity to testify today, and the Congresswoman will submit a formal letter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our final two speakers for the evening, Vincent Fang, representing Councilmember Margaret Chin, and Vanessa Hall.
Hi, everyone. I'm Vincent. I'm representing Councilmember Margaret Chin, representative of District 1. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to speak at the hearing for the 2016 NYCHA Annual Draft Plan. First, I want to commend NYCHA and the administration for being responsive to some of our past concerns, especially the annual NYPD and pilot payments and capital improvements. Under the NYCHA Draft Annual Plan and NextGeneration NYCHA Plan, the authority will be relieved of the annual NYPD and pilot payments, saving the authority over $100 million a year. Furthermore, the city is committing over $300 million in the next 3 years to fix NYCHA buildings' dilapidated roofs. I appreciate the efforts that the chair has made, and I look forward to continue working with you to keep improving NYCHA for all of its residents. This hearing tonight provides a crucial opportunity for elected officials, housing advocates, and local stakeholders to ensure that we continue to have a strong and sustainable affordable housing in New York City. Since 2010, I have been a member of the New York City Alliance to Preserve Public Housing, which is a coalition of housing advocates, resident leaders, and elected officials who strive to protect public housing. This year, I continue to stand by my colleagues to support the position paper submitted by this group. 2 years ago, NYCHA attempted to seek a means for increasing revenue through the infill plan. The plan was meant to shed light onto the challenges faced by the Housing Authority in addressing the severe impact of economic shortages. The infill plan sparked public outcry due to its lack of engagement with community and local leaders. That is why I supported 2 resolutions calling on NYCHA to go through the Uniform Land Use Review Procedure, or ULURP, for any proposed disposition of its land or buildings. Both passed unanimously, but NYCHA has yet to take any steps toward meeting the demands of the resolutions. In the NextGen NYCHA plan, NYCHA once again reiterated its interest in pursuing development of 17,000 units on NYCHA property, of which only 80% would be affordable. I implore NYCHA to work with elected officials, local stakeholders, and most importantly, the residents, on a meaningful engagement process. While NYCHA's most recent efforts, the community visioning process, is a significant improvement to past attempts, it needs to prioritize the concerns of resident associations and residents of the land development is slated for. Again, I urge NYCHA to follow a thorough and transparent process that would include resident engagement, effective communications, and open community review. One of the concerns I've heard from residents is whether these housing developments built on NYCHA lands is affordable for current residents. I want to reiterate that any residential development must take into account the critical need for affordable housing in the city, including affordability for very low-income New Yorkers. Furthermore, NYCHA must make all efforts to ensure long-term affordability in the future by maintaining ownership of any new developments on NYCHA grounds. As chair of the City Council's Committee on the Aging, I believe that senior housing opportunities should be a priority within the community visioning process. I also believe that the priority should be to address the overcrowding issue within NYCHA developments. Any potential development on NYCHA land must first meet the needs of the residents living there before all other prospective occupants. We all recognize the tremendous financial challenges that NYCHA faces from inadequate federal support and growing expenses from an aging infrastructure. But NYCHA has passed these expenses on to residents through rent increases coupled with long delays for repairs for far too long. I recommend that NYCHA creates a streamlined process to address repairs and priority capital improvements. For example, at Rutgers Houses Building 5, Rutgers Houses Building 5 experienced weekly hot water outages due to a faulty boiler. Despite some attempts to fix the boiler, residents had to consistently call the customer contact center, my staff, and the resident association for nearly 2 months before the issue was resolved, which is unacceptable. My residents and all NYCHA residents deserve quality living conditions in their own homes. Lastly, NYCHA should ensure that all public hearings and published materials are accessible to residents regardless of age, mobility, or language spoken at home. That means making sure that interpreters are always available to help communicate with residents who do not speak English. Furthermore, NYCHA should take into account the demographic population of a development and translate published materials such as newsletters into languages that the residents speak. I hope you take these recommendations for the draft fiscal year 2016 annual plan into consideration, and I look forward to continue working with you.
Thank you. Our final speaker for the evening, Vanessa Hall.
Good evening, everyone. I represent on both sides of the coin this evening. The first side is as a resident of Astoria Houses. As is well known in Astoria Houses, in Astoria and Long Island City, there's a lot of residential growth there, and it's also where, as Astoria residents of NYCHA, we have had part of our property already been sold, or 2 buildings are expected to be built on us. And it's also where it's already been approved that down the middle of our neighborhood, a 2-way lane that never existed there before has been approved through the community board, as well as from what I understand with NYCHA. The concern that I come before on behalf of the residents, as well as being a member of my resident association for 19 years, is the fact that it's a division of our community. Our community is a generational community. My grandparents moved in Astoria Houses. They were one of the first 10 families to move there in 1951. And I watched that residence grow in so many different ways, in the good and the bad. And I work hard along with the rest of the residents there to continue to make sure our quality of life becomes better and better each time. And then I speak on the other side of the coin. I'm also part of the community outreach team of NYCHA, where we do go out to the communities, and I've been very privileged to be part of this team because it gives me the opportunity to also visit other NYCHA developments and meet and greet other residents who has the same concerns as we do, but also let them know that we're here to represent, as well as not only the concerns that NYCHA may have, but also what the residents have to give over to NYCHA, to be a liaison on both sides to NYCHA of the residents, as well as the residents to NYCHA. And as far as with the Section 3, we do go out there and we work very hard to make sure that we get the word out about the Section 3 jobs, but we also need the residents, as well as in those developments that's been hit by Sandy, to also cooperate and also send out their resumes to the literature that be sent out, the communications that do be sent out to you. And we do agree and will work harder to make sure whomever feels left out and not being properly given the information, we will make sure that we will go back to those developments and read and make sure that that information is put there, and also go flyer in those communities as well again. But I just wanted to also say that we all work hard to make sure that we have a better life, and we need to work in unison and make sure that we hear each other and hear each other fairly, and make sure that we understand where each other is coming from and give each other the respect that is deserved, and be able to sit back and just listen for a moment and hear the other side, as well as the other side sit back and hear one another, because that's the only way that we're going to achieve what we need to achieve as this time that we're working on becomes better and better. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. This concludes the New York City Housing Authority's significant amendment to the fiscal year 2015 annual plan and fiscal year 2016 annual plan public hearing. Thank you for your comments. Have a good evening.